I'm on my way to see Power Station, the movie. Welcome to Energy Chat. So I'm interested in this movie because I don't know that much about it, but it's made by a few artists, and apparently it's their story to turn their local area in Walthamstow in London into a power station. And the way they would do that is, I assume, by putting solar panels on people's roofs so that the whole neighbourhood was generating electricity and they're also using electricity. I'm really interested in this film because I want to know how people, lay people in terms of the energy industry, experience the energy industry and experience the idea of a power plant and how they apply that to where they live and how they get energy. I want to see if there's anything that I can learn about how to communicate my years of experience in the energy industry, and especially about energy economics and about the function of the grid and about how the grid supports the wider society. I want to know if there's any lessons I can learn about communicating that to a wider audience, especially an audience who may be interested in climate change and related activities, that is going green, being sustainable, etc. I think there's a really big community and a lot of people that really want to do something to help in these types of situations, but they don't always know how to do it. And I believe that this film is going to be a window into how a community has been able to try to do something to help stop climate change. Now, my reservations going into the film is that I know that artists, I'm a fan of art, I'm a fan of film. I've been so my whole life, and especially modern art. And a lot of modern art seeks to they would see in their descriptions, reconstitute a problem or rethink a problem and look at alternative ways of doing it. But in reality, they don't invent something new, they don't actually create something that is possible. So for example, there was an idea of a hydrogen powered car where a solar panel inflated a big balloon of hydrogen on top of the roof of a car. And obviously it would have taken weeks for that solar panel to generate enough hydrogen in this balloon on top of the car for the car to drive even a few miles. But in the context of an art installation, they were able to say, we've rethought the way that we can do environmentally damaging things like driving a car, and this is the way that we've been able to recast it in an environmentally friendly way. And in reality, that's not based on physics or consumer products or convenience or reliability or sustainability. Because remember, sustainability is about, can we do this thing that we're doing for ages? And that's not just about, is it physically possible? It's about, can we get society around it functioning in a way that makes sense? And society functions in a way when each individual person is able to participate in it and actually get their needs met in some way. And a lot of the reason that people are going against the energy industry is because some of them are not starting to get their needs met, or it's too expensive. My belief is that the only way to build a system that is resilient and actually provides what we need, which is electricity all the time to provide all the different services that we need and has the resilience that we need, is to have a big grid rather than go off grid and have little areas that are self-sufficient. Because in reality, they might be self-sufficient for most of the time, but then in the times they really need electricity, you're going to lean on the grid. And if you're not paying for the grid when you don't need it, it's not going to be there when you do need it. And that's the key for me about energy security, especially as we go to net zero. Now, I think that solar panels have got a great reputation because they're very cheap, and nowadays you can buy them secondhand, just put them out in your garden, it's worth doing, or put them on your shed, put them on your roof, and that's great. What I don't think that people understand about solar panels is the fact that they impact the wider grid in a negative way sometimes. Initially, when they got brought out, there was a feed-in tariff to encourage people to have solar panels on their roofs, but as soon as lots of people had them on their roofs, it started to be a problem for the control room to manage power flows on the grid, because they didn't know how much power was being generated in the lower parts of the network near people's houses. And that actually became a net deficit, or not a benefit to the whole system, and it ended up having to put more flexible generation, which is typically gas, on the system to compensate for the unknown power generation and usage that came with all these solar panels. As we're evolving to the next stage of the grid, we're getting a lot more control and dispatch capabilities in the lower levels of the network, that is the distribution network that you might see around your local area. And those are run by the local distribution network companies. So it's UK Power Networks here in London. And these guys are employing batteries that people have at schools or or factories or businesses, and they're using those batteries to manage power flows in the network. And that's like a microcosm of the wider system, where we use flexible generation like gas power plants to ramp up and down to supply us with energy when we need it. And the point of all this is that we need a system which is always on all the time and can survive the longest times when we don't have any renewable generation over dark winters, and that needs to be resilient for something like 50 years. So we need to, when we pay for an energy system, remember only a very small fraction of the money that we pay for electricity is actually going on the generation part. That's the thing that solar and wind do, for example. Most of it is paying for getting it to you when and where you need it, which is the whole network, and it's the when you need it is the very expensive part. So if you want an area to go off grid, maybe that would be great because you're getting power where you need it, but it's about when you need it. Because if you want to have power all the time, then you need to be connected to that wider network where there's wider capacity. And the thing about fossil fuels, which unfortunately is true, is that they're very storable, and as well as being storable, they have the ability for you to essentially, once you have the power plant, just feed more and more and more fuel through it, and all you need to do is source that fuel from somewhere, store it, and it's quite easily to store. If we want to go net zero, we have to replace almost all of that storage capacity and all that natural gas and oil and things like that, in terms of all the tankers, underground storage facilities, above ground storage facilities, all the stuff that's coming to us in futures contracts, all the petrol in people's tanks, all of this energy storage all over the network. It's something like, 9 or 10 days of oil and gas, about 2/3 of our total energy usage for like 9 or 10 days in carbon fuels we have coming to us. That allows our economy to function. Now the downside is that if we want to replace all this to get a net zero or even just a zero carbon electricity system, we need to replace all of that with batteries and with other kinds of stored energy like pumped hydro, compressed air. And I work in that industry, so that is exactly what I am trying to do with my entire life, especially combining storage and wind and storage and solar. That's kind of my big thing. But in order to do this, it costs money. And if you were to isolate one part of the network but have the same network resiliency, so have the same ability to have electricity through all kinds of situations, all the way out to the worst possible case in 50 years. And remember, you might be able to get away with it in your local area or like rough it, but on a country scale, it really means that people will die. And energy shortages can cause all kinds of things that you don't want to happen in society. And we can have that debate moving forward about, can we have a system that's less resilient? For example, in Texas, they have a very similar electricity grid to here in GB, but they just have about 1/5 of the resiliency, and they just expect people to die in storms every 10 years or die in heat waves every 10 years when the grid falls over. We in GB, we expect a much higher level of resiliency, and we have to pay for that. So if you have a local area where you could maybe have you want to have a local place that's net zero, that's good. But if you actually scaled up the cost of buying enough batteries for that local area, for example, to store all the solar energy so that you could have energy over the darkest 2 weeks of the year, or for example, then you might be looking at costs which spiral out of control and are way more than just the cost of solar. Having said all of that, it does help the network to have load and generation take place in the same place, but in terms of resiliency for the future, that always needs to be the case. So if you're going to do something like have a whole street that generates most of electricity, it's only helpful for the system because we have to plan, and the system's built around providing energy to the poorest, most vulnerable consumer in the worst possible circumstances. In order to make sure that that's the case for everyone surrounding communities as well, if you are going to have an area that is mostly off-grid or not dragging much power down from the rest of the network, then you need to make sure that that area is able to do that for years and years and years, because there's no good saying that for 5 years we've got an area which is not taking much energy, and then the next year it needs way loads of energy, because it's just going to be taking energy from other parts of the network. So when you think about changing the way the energy network works, everything that you do needs to be sustainable for years and years and years. And that's the part about resiliency that we don't often talk about in the net zero debate. So I'm really looking forward to this film for multiple reasons. I love film. I love lots of things about film, but I specifically like talking about energy. And hopefully they're going to get it right and tell the right story. And if not, I'm gonna make another video anyway. But hopefully I'm going to give my review, give you some extra tips about it, and hopefully you can go out and watch this film. It's screening for a few more days, and then hopefully get involved in the debate about net zero. Thanks a lot.